Hi, we have Abbie Cobb on the line with us. And first of all, I just want to say I'm so happy that you can make it today with your incredibly busy schedule. You can certainly see a lot of Abbie's work if you go to the bio section from the landing page. But you've done everything from The Mentalist, 90210. You're currently on Suburgatory. You did Jonas, L.A., Disney's Good Luck Charlie. I mean, you've just been doing a million things, and I'm so happy for you. Let me
thank you.
start. You're very welcome. Let me let people know, because it's a really interesting story. You know, you're not one of these people who started off in LA or New York or Chicago or Miami in a major market. You actually grew up in Nebraska, and eventually you made your way to Los Angeles. So first, I just wanted to start off by asking, what made you decide to go to LA?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, and I think that there was a part of me as I was growing up. I grew up all over in Northern California and in Virginia. Spent some time in Oklahoma and ended up in Nebraska, Omaha area. And I always loved performing, and I knew I wanted to do something that had to do with performing, but I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to pursue theater or if I wanted to pursue film and television. And through some connections and different people that I met that had gone out to both New York and LA before me, I had some really great conversations and opportunities to ask a lot of questions. And I did things like what everyone who's listening is doing today. I did research, and I took classes, and I tried to figure out what would be the best fit for me. So I decided that I would go to where the work is, which is Los Angeles or New York City. And I made my choice after a lot of careful thought and planning, and I ended up visiting both cities first to figure out which one I might want to pursue, and then I decided to go from there. I didn't have a friend in either city. I didn't know a soul, and I decided to make it work anyway. So no, I didn't have any inside great uncle who was a famous producer that put me in his movies. I started from the ground and worked my way up.
Now, when you first actually entered Los Angeles, did you go there? Did you have any kind of representation prior to actually moving there, or did you find representation there?
Yeah, what I did was I took a couple years when I was still in school and growing up a little bit, and I decided I wanted to learn as much as I could, and I heard an advertisement on a radio for a showcase that I could audition for, and if I was accepted, I would get the chance to perform a monologue and some acting scenes for agents and managers and casting directors that work in almost every major city of the marketplaces like Chicago and Atlanta and New York City and Los Angeles. So I ended up doing that as part of my learning process, where I was gathering up a bunch of information to make my decision about if this was just going to be a hobby for me or if I could actually work and live and be an actress full time. And the interesting thing about showcases, most of them have an opportunity where you can not only perform but then connect one-on-one with the people who are your judges, which are these VIP agents and managers. And I met an agent at this showcase, which was held in Orlando, Florida, and she said, if you ever make your way to Los Angeles, I would love to work with you. So I didn't sign a contract or anything like that. It was just her word of encouragement for me to pursue. And I realized I had never even visited the city before, so I kept in touch with her. And we set up some email meetings and internet meetings back and forth. And I came out for a summer from May to August and tried it out. And she sent me out on a few auditions, and I wanted to make sure this is what I wanted to do, and actually got to work in her office a little bit as an intern, and which I highly recommend for anybody who can do that. It's a really good way to learn the business, and you see it from the other side, things like what makes a good headshot and how phone calls work from casting directors. And then she continued to be my agent for quite a while out here in LA once I was sure this is the city for me. And we have a great relationship.
You know, I think it's really interesting, and you made a really good point about going to LA. A lot of times people have asked me, well, you know, I live in, you know, whether it's, you know, New Mexico, or I live in Iowa, or I live in, you know, South Dakota, but I really want to work in LA or New York. You know, all I need to do is find representation. And what people really don't understand is that, you know, for the most part, and there are some exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, if you want to work in LA or you want to work in New York, you've got to be there because agents need you there.
Yeah, a lot of it is possible, like you said, it's possible for people to get work when they don't live in the city, but I would say a good 95% of working actors that are consistently working all the time, full-time, professionally, only in acting, really do live where the work is. And the reason for that is quite a few of my auditions are very last minute, and they really want to see you in person. So although I'm able to send in a videotaped audition, I could get a call, like I got a call last Friday morning, for an audition at 6 p.m. And if I had been out of town, or if I had been, you know, still in Nebraska and only traveling in for auditions, there would be no way I could make that flight to fly in person. And they really wanted to see people live in the room. So I really encourage, if it's something that you want to pursue as a career, seriously, professionally, only to be a performer, either a model or a dancer or a singer, and you're really serious about it, you have to go to where the work is. And if it's going to be something that's part-time or a hobby, or you know you're gifted at it and you know you love it, but it may just be supplemental income, or you just want to perform every now and then to fill a need, then maybe it'll work for you to stay where you are and only travel in once you book a job. But in my experience, I think I encourage people to really at least live within driving distance, where you can go on if you get a last-minute call.
Well, one of the things that you did, and I thought it was a great idea, was instead of uprooting yourself, moving to, a new place. And I know, like, sometimes people who are, younger and they have families and they, pick up and they just kind of move. You tested the waters first. And I thought that was a really smart idea of, taking a couple of months so that, for people who are in school and they're not really sure, or even, I guess, for an adult as well, to go there, for 2 or 3 months and see what it's like, and not to even gauge that much on how much you book at that particular time, but is this something that your stomach can handle? Are you okay with driving around to all the auditions? Are you okay with the uncertainty? Just to really get a feel for, is this something you want to pursue on a full-time level? Right.
I encourage everyone to do that. And once you do decide that you like it, if you decide you don't like it after a month or 2 or 3 and you want to move home, then your problem is solved and your decision is made. And if you do decide that you'd like to stay, I would give yourself, most people say 5 years. Give yourself 5 years to be in the city before you expect to be able to survive solely on your profession. It could happen much sooner than that. It did for me. I'm one of the lucky ones, I think. And it could take a little bit longer, but they say it takes about 5 years. If you have 0 things on your resume and you don't know a soul, it may take a little while to get an agent, and then a little while to meet a few casting directors, and then your numbers start growing from there, and the appointments continue to grow until you book your first big thing, and then you book more because that's on your resume. And I know some people come out and try it for 6 months or a year. They get so frustrated and they move home. But I think giving yourself a little trial visit to the city is a great idea. And then if you decide to actually move here, make yourself stay. Make yourself stay for a good 5 years before you decide it's not for you, because the longer you're here, the greater your chance is for connecting with someone who can change your life.
Now, do you find that most of the people that you know who've had success in LA have moved to Los Angeles after having a pretty good amount of experience in their hometown in a secondary market, or have you known many people who've actually just gone to LA with virtually no experience at all and still are able to find representation and work?
Yeah, I think honestly it just depends on the person. I think it's different for everybody. I know both. I know people like Jane on the show on Suburgatory who plays Tessa. She's the awesome redhead. And she went to school in New York at the Stella Adler School, and then came out here, didn't have a single credit. She booked Shameless right away, and then from Shameless she went straight to Suburgatory. I think she was out here for like 6 months before she got her own show. And she did have school on her resume, but I don't know that that's necessarily what got her the part at all on Shameless. Maybe it taught her how to audition or something like that. And then I also know other people that I've done, plays with and, worked on films and TV shows with that had college, finished and then did graduate school at USC and then went to New York and did theater off Broadway for 5 years and then came and pursued it. And by then they were in their late 20s, early 30s, and now they're working. So I think it's a mixture because I also know people who have extensive training that are not working, and I know people who don't have any experience at all and are not working. And then, so I think it really just depends on your look, what's in demand right now, on your talent. If you can walk in the room and blow the casting directors away, it's not going to matter if you have Meisner technique on your resume at all. It won't matter if you have an improv class on there. Of course it can't hurt, but if it's going to delay your journey out here to LA to take 5 years off to do classes, you may have missed your window of starting out your resume here in LA if you're older. It just totally depends on the person. It really does.
Now, what would be your recommendation when somebody they've decided they are going to go to LA? How do you go about even just finding a place to live?
Sure. I talk about that. I get asked that question quite a bit. So I decided to write everything down, and I have a book that I wrote to help actors out. I have a whole chapter on moving to LA because it's such an important question, and so many people, when they get here, they take a bus in, and they are dropped off on Hollywood Boulevard, and they say, okay, where do the actors live? And they're walking down the sidewalk with their suitcase, and it really takes some thought and planning, and there are different sections of LA that are great, and there's some sections of LA that are not so great. Just like any big city, you really have to do your homework about where most auditions happen, where most people that you feel comfortable living around live, that kind of thing. So when I visited, I met with a lot of people on my little temporary 3-month trip to try to figure that out. So LA is broken down into about 9 smaller cities to make up a big city. And there's a place called the Valley, the San Fernando Valley. It's just north of Hollywood. If you've seen the famous Mount Lee with the Hollywood sign on it, and you imagine walking over the top of that hill, you'll be looking at the Valley. And that's where I live. It's broken up into a lot of great places like Burbank, Studio City, Sherman Oaks, North Hollywood. Universal Studios is right there in a place called Universal City. It's a really great suburban feel. It feels exactly like the Midwest, and there's tons of auditions because Universal Studios is there, which is where a lot of films and TV shows are shot. And there's also Warner Brothers lot, and that's where shows like Two Broke Girls and 2.5 Men, my show Suburgatory, Shameless, Harry's Law, all those shows, many, many more are filmed right there in Burbank. So lots of studios are there. And there's also a lot of actors that live in Hollywood. The rent's a little bit cheaper, and they have great access to the bus systems and the metro and the underground subway. You can live in Hollywood and not have a car if if you're right there at the hub of transportation. I recommend everybody having a car because you never know how far you're going to have to drive for a job or for an audition, but Hollywood's the center of the public transportation system, so a lot of people live there. And there's good streets and bad streets, so you just have to do your research, and I think most people figure it out pretty quickly, and there's a lot of people who are willing to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and give you good recommendations on where to live. But Hollywood is a hub for auditions for sure.
Great. Well, I just want to make sure everybody knows the title of your book. It's on the screen so everybody can see it, but it's called Stuck on a Ferris Wheel, and people can see it right at your website, which is abbiecobb.com, which is also right on the screen. So one of the other things that I'm just trying to get a gauge for to try to help people out with is, look, I realize everybody has different standards of living, but if you could just give us a ballpark idea, whether you're in a Hollywood area or the Sherman Oaks area, like just in general, to get a one-bedroom apartment, like what would it cost to live for a month?
Sure. Well, that depends on what you're used to as far as your lifestyle, and then the different stipulations you have for what you have to have for an apartment. If you are on a really tight budget, I know people who rent somebody's couch for $200 a month, and they sleep, in a house with 5 guys, and he pays, I think, $250 to sleep in the living room, and that's how he makes it work for him. And then I know people who feel like they have to have 2 parking spots and 2 bathrooms in their house, and needs to have a security guard, and it needs to have, recycling and a gardener, and they pay $2,500 for their rent every month. So I think it just depends. But I think the majority of apartments you can find probably for $800 or $900, maybe more, available for $1,000, between $800 and $1,000 for a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Even cheaper, probably if it's a single or a bachelor pad. Right around $800 to $1,000 is what you can expect to pay every month. And some of those buildings will include laundry, and some of them won't. Some of them will include 1 parking spot, and some of them won't, so you just have to look. And there's also a great thing you can do by looking at guest houses. There's a lot of guest houses in the Valley. Those places like Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Burbank, where people will rent them out. I had a girlfriend rent out somebody's guest house. It's just like a little house in the backyard that's a separate room with a mini kitchen and a bathroom. She paid $500 a month for that. So she had her own private room, and it was in a residential neighborhood. She was in somebody's backyard that had a big fence and really safe. So that's what she did to make it work for her budget. I think most two bedrooms, either 1 bathroom or two bathrooms, they're around $1,200 to $1,600, and that usually comes with 2 parking spots. So you really just, if you go to Craigslist, you can type in Los Angeles and type in, there's a little housing link. You can browse around. There's also a really great website that I love called padmapper.com, P-A-D Mapper, M-A-P-P-E-R.com, and their motto is making apartment hunting suck less, and I think that's hilarious. And they basically, what they do is they bring up a big Google map, and they combine every major apartment hunting website all in one place on a Google map, and you can put in what your particular budget is, when you're planning on moving, different things you want, like I have a cat, or I need a parking spot, or I want a washer and dryer in my building, not a laundromat, and they'll flag it on Google Maps in the little area that you'd like to live, and that's how I found my apartment, and I always recommend it. It really cuts out on a lot of time.
That's incredible. Now, I know we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left, so I know and this could be an entire workshop, and I know you do travel, the country doing workshops as well, but maybe you could walk us through the process of, you get a phone call from an agent, and then about an audition. What happens after that?
Sure. a big part of your journey will be getting the audition. And I spell that out really clearly in my book on how you can get an audition either through an agent or on your own, even if you don't have any representation. But if you've already got the agent or you got the audition yourself and your email just, binged and you've got to prepare, what I do is first I look to see when it is. I read my email all the way through and make sure I know the right date and time and that it's not for 1 hour from now, but it's, 1 day from now or whatever. And you'll have included in it a character name and a character description in something called a breakdown. And that is the casting director breaking down all the roles that they're currently looking for. And it might say something like the role of Christopher. He's a basketball player. He needs to be 18 to 22, and he needs to play, 16 or 17 and have brown hair. Make sure you come in wearing some sort of sports attire. And he's charming, charismatic, and he flirts a lot. So you look at that breakdown, make sure you see any notes you might have for wardrobe, make sure you know when it is, make sure you know your character name, and also either attached or in directions in the email or phone call, you'll know where to go to get your script, or it'll be attached to your email. And those are called sides, S-I-D-E-S. Sides are just a portion of the script that you have to learn and memorize. So then you'll say, oh, okay, I'm the role of Christopher. So then you'll highlight all your lines and make sure you're familiar with those. Some choose to memorize them like you would for a play or if you're reciting a speech. And some people to just be really familiar with them because either way you're going to be holding the script in your hand when you audition. The casting directors really recommend that you do that so that the people who see you audition, either on the tape or in the room, know that it's a work in progress. It's not your finished performance, and it's a really weird, just standard recommendation that they always say, always hold your sides in your hand, even if you don't have to look down at them. So what I do is I memorize my lines, or I'm just really familiar with them. I make sure I wear clothing that fits the character. It doesn't need to be anything like some people always think that they need to wear all black or something neutral for an audition like that, but you really can dress to fit the character. So you might find like a jersey and some basketball shorts or something for Christopher, and then you'll go in, and in the room will be if it's something called a pre-read, it'll be the casting assistant, and if they narrow you down and they decide they like you, they'll show you to a head casting director at a callback. And if they like you, they might bring you to something called a producer session, which is where producers will be. And I actually had one of those this morning. I went in for my audition on Friday. They really liked me, and it was the casting assistant and the casting director in the room with a video camera. They liked it. They said, we want you to meet producers today. So I went in this morning, and there were two additional people in the room that were both producers. So if they like what I did, they'll bring me to something called a network, bring me to the network, and that could either be a network test or a camera test. And that means 4 or 5 or 6 more people will be in the room from a place like CBS Corporate or ABC Corporate or NBC. And then they'll just continue to narrow down, and you go up and up, meeting more and more important people. And at the end of the day, the network will be the one to make the final decision on big roles like series regulars. And casting directors will make the final call for the smaller co-starring guest star roles.
Well, I guess what's really important for people also to understand, sometimes people say to me, well, I've had all these auditions and I keep getting callbacks and I'm not booking the job. Apparently they don't like what I'm doing. And my feeling is you kind of have it backwards. They must love what you're doing if they keep calling you back to audition and you keep getting the callbacks, because that means they really like you. Otherwise they wouldn't keep calling you back. And,
that's right.
As the realities are there are so many factors that go into booking the job and not booking the job. And in many cases, it's completely out of our control. And in a lot of ways, it has very little to do with our actual audition, or at least in some instances.
True.
So that, when you don't get the job, and I know that's a whole part of your book as well, it's nothing personal. It's not a statement about who you are as a human being. It's not a statement about your acting abilities. You weren't right for this particular, part, period. But the fact that you're getting the auditions, That is wonderful, and that's a real statement about what you are doing correct.
Right, and I think that it's really important to remember, if you're an actor, your job is to get an audition and then be really excellent in the audition. That's your only job. Your job is not to book. It's really great if you book, but that part isn't in your control. What's in your control is giving a really great performance and making sure you're getting auditions. So that's the advice I always give, because as long as you're excellent in the room, they're going to keep calling you back, and eventually it's going to work in your favor, where they actually need a blonde this time, or they actually want a redhead with freckles this time. It's going to work in your favor, and you're going to be the one who gets it. So.
Well, listen, we have to wrap things up here, but Abbie, I just wanted to thank you so much again. And for everybody, definitely check out Abbie's book, Stuck on a Ferris Wheel. She is not only a very, very talented actor, but she's also just an unbelievable human being, which when you have that combination, it's really something special. And really, I just want to wish you all the best of luck. I hope we continue to, see you in many, many different projects. Hey, I hope I get a chance to work with you at some point in the future. That would be cool, too. But anyhow, thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Of course, and I wish everybody listening good luck. Don't give up.
And by the way, the very last thing, if you do have a question, feel free to go to Abbie's website. As you can see, it's abbiecobb.com. And let me just warn you, if you do send Abbie a question, it might take a long time for her to get back in touch with you. She travels a lot, and she's just putting in crazy hours on shoots. So don't expect a real quick response, but Abbie is really good at getting back in touch with people. So feel free to shoot her a question if you need to. Anyhow, Abbie, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, Abbie.